Okay. So I made a recording earlier today of the entirety of Chapter 8, and the majority of it didn't save. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to read again. I feel like every time this has happened, it's because of, God's teaching me a lesson about my anger, that I need to be able to let go of things. And not my invest my sense of self-worth or identity in whether or not something goes according to plan. So but this time I'm going to try to mitigate any problems with that by just having a small window open that shows me whether or not I'm still live, and whether or not it's still working. That way, in case things go down or south, I can address it at that time. But regardless, it seems like as well that every time this has happened, it's because or it's been connected to me thinking that I've said something particularly illuminating or interesting at the end of the reading. I think to myself, wow, those thoughts were very profound, and that was very well articulated. All 3 times that this has happened, I've said to myself, I'm so glad I'm recording this so that I can go back and listen to how awesome I was. And so I honestly think God is teaching me a lesson in, I mean, not that I'm humble, but he's trying to force humility down my throat, come hell or high water. So, but anyway, I mean, the things that I was saying beforehand, I'll edit this out, so that anybody who listens to this doesn't have a giant, like intro, rambling intro to sort through or sift through in order to get to the actual reading, myself included. But my thoughts were basically around evaluating. Sorry, I still have a cold. And I know that's disgusting. Anyway, evaluating Antoine Arjakovsky's perspective on Caesaropapism and Papocaesarism, which obviously has extreme downsides to it. The kind of the ossification of the living element of faith when it becomes a part of a kind of institutional structure that is primarily propagated through power and domination. The ways in which the machinations of a political entity can have a corrosive effect on the life of faith and on the possibilities for that faith to be embodied in actual life, in right glorification through the elevation of right truth or right right dogma. But I also wonder, I mean, yeah, of course, you can look back in time and see, like, yeah, there were a lot of mistakes that the Byzantine Empire made in how it attempted to integrate Christianity into the functioning of an empire. But, but it's also beyond dispute at this point that every political system is tied to some mode of self-transcendence that it propagates to the masses. In other words, some form of religion. And in our own society, that religion is a combination of the glorification of the self and the glorification of technology as the vehicle by which one achieves self-transcendence. So it's a focus on one's own self-transcendence through the use of technology as the God tool that gets you there. The symbol of the power of this cult of the self is money, is physical kind of material power, and so and so we're no less religious in this day and age. No one. I mean, even the Age of Enlightenment people, were no less religious. They worshipped reason. They worshipped rationality as their god. And so you see the ways in which cultures attempt to propagate particular understandings of the truth to the masses, to the masses of people, in order to that give shape to how society functions and operates, and the sorts of things that people pursue. And in the case of our own culture, which is obsessed with money, as Maximus the Confessor says in the Centuries on Love, somewhere in there, that gold is always and only ever a tool used for the satisfaction of an infinite diversity of desires that it itself creates the need for by its presence in your life. And so anyway, like in every culture throughout history, politics and religion have gone hand in hand, and Christianity is no exception. Of course, if Christianity is going to be, widespread, like the way a political consciousness is going to deal with that, or a polis is going to deal with that, an empiric construction is going to deal with that, is it's going to attempt to integrate that new religious consciousness into its understanding of its own place in the world. And so it's natural, basically, that Christianity would become, if it has already displayed some degree of dominance culturally as a phenomenon in the Spirit of God, then it's natural that human beings would attempt to instantiate that in law, in politics, because that's what we do. Like you can't completely separate disestablishment or establishmentarianism. Is actually, it's neither a case of disestablishmentarianism or establishmentarianism. Rather, church and state are always intertwined to some degree or another. Religion and the state are always intertwined. It just depends on what the state chooses to make the state religion. In our case, it's technopoly. It's technocracy. It's the use of technology to extend the power of human beings throughout space and time, through the use of the internet, through various means of coercion and control, in offering people kind of windows into something beyond themselves that draws them upward into that thing. They're offering people religious uplift. It's usually religious uplift into enslavement to a passion, whether it's pornography or idol worship, like idol meaning like this or that, celebrity worship, veneration, the modeling of your life after that of the celebrities, who are usually decadent characters in of themselves that people attempt to emulate, or at least to understand themselves and their self-worth in relation to have people that they can both erect as exemplars and then tear down as pariahs when they're no longer exemplars. It's so it gives people a kind of collective scapegoating mechanism, and so on ad nauseum. Like our empire, like all empires, have to have some mechanism, have to have some mode of self-transcendence that they offer people as a means of participation in the life of the polis. And so if it's not Christianity, it's going to be something else. Now, the way in which the Byzantine Emperor went about that, one can question, but one can't question that there's going to be a religious component to every polis. Just frankly, when you think about, let's say, like the coming globalism, or the globalism we're currently living in, what is the religion that is preached in that kind of power structure? That's my question. Anyway, but let's get to the reading. So, starting on in section, or rather on page 225 at the top, or rather I'll start down here I'll start down here at. I'm just going to reiterate what I said before I started reading this, which is that in some ways, I think he's. In some ways, I think he's right. Like, that maybe that obviously there are legitimate criticisms of any political system ever, including, but not especially not, including but not limited to a what constitutes a kind of Christian empire, or a Christian understanding of the entwining nature of politics and theology. But given the inevitable intertwining of modes of self-transcendence and politics and political governance, is it possible to have a polis that is oriented around right glorification rather than right truth? Because that's is it possible to have a nation state model that is focused around right glorification and not right truth, that gives room for the love of enemies. I don't think any secularism is going to achieve that. We already see what's happening with that. We just get an inversion of all categories, and the margin moves to the center and becomes must be elevated because of the collapse of the distinction between God and creation, kind of panentheism or pantheism. Both amount to a very similar phenomenon, which is that every single person and every single phenomenological perspective, so no matter how marginal, every experience of eros, in the words of Jean-Luc Marion in his book The Erotic Phenomenon, every experience of the erotic reduction is in some sense a manifestation of the body of God. If that's the case, and we're living in a pantheistic or a panentheistic system in which there is a God, but that God is everyone, then all marginalized perspectives, no matter how narrow or self-defeating or frankly disgusting they are, need to be listened to and elevated. And so you end up getting a reversal or an inversion of all social norms in order to show deference to the most marginalized, because they represent a part of the body of God that hasn't been properly listened to. And so if that's the idea of justice that he's pointing to, a kind of love of enemy that looks like a forgetting of the truth, a refusal to delineate the boundaries around what is and is not true with respect to the indulgence of the passions, then I can't follow him there. But we'll see.